I'm Mahbubul. I work as a project manager in the Whitechapel Vision team in Hamlets and Caroline.
I'm Caroline Pembroke and I'm assisting with Open Design Matters as part of the team.
Some of the discussions talking about, how the city and the migration and so on. Now, I guess the master plan is, you can argue that it's the city kind of moving eastwards, and that is that expansion that's going on. In terms of the master plan, so this was started about 2013 with a wide range of consultation where a number of different stakeholders and developers, the likes of Sainsbury's and housing associations and so on, were interested in developing in and around Whitechapel, and hence the master plan came to being that, try to, from a planning perspective, how do we mesh all of those things together. So that took detailed a lot of consultation with various stakeholder groups, with community groups, with market traders, with local businesses in and around Whitechapel, and so the master plan was adopted December 2013, and that tries to kind of take into account the changes that would happen within the next 5, 10, 15 years in and around Whitechapel. So in terms of the demographic of Whitechapel, it has incredible youth population, and hence you can see some of the things around the chicken shop and what goes on. 60% of the people under 30 years old. Likewise, in terms of, again, the kind of the migration, over 50% of the Whitechapel living in and around are from a BME background. And I actually fit in both of those categories, under 30 and also from a, so my dad's side is actually from Bangladesh, my mom's side from India. So in that sense, that kind of both under 30 and kind of the migrant background. Also, in terms of from educational perspective, some of the schools are doing incredibly well. The schools actually amongst the highest performing in terms of league table. However, the interesting contrast is that up to GCSEs, young people do really well, but 50% of 19-year-olds in Hamlets don't have a level 3 qualification. So things actually start to tail off then, and then in terms of them entering the labour market with the lack of qualifications, lack of skills, that's a huge challenge, and that's one of the things that we are trying to look towards now. Some of the things that have been mentioned around the rich kind of cultural history and for example, the Brick Lane Mosque is actually a relevant example. So, and that kind of demonstrates the migration history of Whitechapel or Brick Lane. So, prior to it being a mosque, it was a synagogue, and before that it was a church. So when the Huguenots come from France came over to the East End, it was it started up as a church. And then when the Jewish community came to the East End from various parts of Europe, it became a synagogue. And then when primarily men from Bangladesh, to an extent India as well, came over to the East End, and in the 60s, 70s onwards, it then became a mosque. So it's gone, for example, that building through the ages has gone through being a religious a building for different religious groups, depending on the demographic. Some of the other things that we can mention that in and around Whitechapel, that Hamlets have, for example, you've got Canary Wharf, you've got the city, you've got Olympics Park, and I guess we are also acutely aware that, for example, although that Canary Wharf exists in Hamlets, 89% of people working in Hamlets don't live in the surrounding 5 boroughs of Canary Wharf, the surrounding East London boroughs. Predominantly people are coming from outside, and I think one of the things, the challenges that we have or we face and we want to try to do is how do we make that people living in Hamlets, but also in other East London boroughs, that are able to access the jobs that will be created. One of the things, so we've got the Royal London Hospital, we've got a leading university, Queen Mary, and one of the things that we are anticipating and hoping that Whitechapel becomes is a world-class centre for life sciences. So life sciences around science and technology is one of the things coming up. We've got Shoreditch as a tech city, and then we're trying to create, or the government's trying to create something called the Med City, and we're trying, in terms of Whitechapel, with Shoreditch kind of expanding, create almost a cluster of science, technology, of digital, of healthcare in and around. And Whitechapel is, in terms of location-wise, it's very good. It's it's in between the city and some of the leading universities, and you've got the Olympics Park on the other side. Also, in terms of context-wise, it has the Royal London Hospital, as well as Queen Mary University, which has a huge medical department, and so in that respect it becomes a very interesting place actually to carry out life sciences research. Can we move to the next slide? Let's start with that.
Okay, so basically the purpose of the master plan is to regenerate Whitechapel, but obviously after listening to everyone today, that we want to ensure that we find the balance between public realm that's in the public interest, but also in attracting investment to the area. The master plan is guided by a framework of 6 key place transformation sites. We're mostly focusing on the high street itself, but the 6 key areas all have their own individual and unique sort of flavour and theme. And I think in terms of thinking about the sensory experience, and after listening to everyone today, in terms of our consultation and how we're going to curate those experiences to inform the designs of those spaces. In terms of the high street, I think it's an extremely complex place. We're doing a range of strategies. Mahbubul, you can probably talk a bit more about the market strategy, but I think we've got to think about the different types of people that are going to be attracted to the high street, and what are their experiences? What's the visitor experience going to be like compared to the local experience? How do we think about the voice of the underrepresented, the children, the females, and how that comes out in terms of design outcomes, safety, lighting, play, and all those types of things. So these are just our guiding principles. Tackling employment growth, we're looking at inclusive design. We really want to, obviously, in terms of the senses, bring out the heritage of Whitechapel. There's lots of unique and iconic buildings. We want to provide, enhance the quality of the open spaces and ensure the type of spaces are there. And yes, enhancing the street market, like I said before, it's a very complex area of the high street. So these are the range of strategies that we're undertaking at the moment. I hope you might want to reflect a bit more on them.
So we do have a number of different strategies that we are trying to work towards. And some of the images that are there. So end of September, we, as part of the Regeneration and kind of introducing the Whitechapel vision, we actually did a street food festival. So if you are aware of Royal London Hospital, or perhaps when you go tomorrow, there's a vacant space in front of the hospital, and usually it's just tarmac. So what we decided to do was actually to do a street food festival, and the food traders that we got on the day we tried to do was either they were local or they had a health angle to them. And we also had a number of different community stores which also had a health angle. So we had Barks NHS on October, the smoking cessation. We had East London Genes and Health to do research on that. And we also had Health Watch Hamlets, who basically are almost like a watchdog charity which analyse the services that are provided in healthcare. And so we had that on the day. And so we decided to do it in front of the hospital. We thought that would be a good place where the footfall is. On the day, I think we probably had about 500 plus people who attended, and I think what was also interesting is, a lot of people might have thought that the people who would turn up on the day might have been, say, for example, either employee at the hospital or perhaps patient at the hospital, but the feedback of about a sample of 50 people showed that 60% of people were either working or patient, 40% of the people who actually came or worked were just general passers-by. And that, I mean, one of the things that also demonstrates is that a lot of people, the footfall that is going through Whitechapel, but also a lot of people using the hospital as a cut-through to actually go through. I also mentioned, for example, the town centre strategy. That's where we're looking at how businesses in Whitechapel High Street and also the market traders. So I think tomorrow doing a session at the Idea Store, and if you haven't been through Whitechapel, I mean, tomorrow you'll get a chance. But in terms of taking the market trade, or the street market, for example, so until probably about 80s or so, it was a well-established market. It was thriving, I mean, including, like, for example, Petticoat Lane. And then they started to decline as people started to move away, as large shopping centres started to open up. So, for example, Alex talked about Petticoat Lane. Today, there's about 400 or so traders, but it has a capacity to for about 700 traders. So, although it's still very busy if you go on a Sunday, but it's probably about declined by about 50%.
It's dead in a week.
Yeah, it's dead in the week. I'm talking about on a Sunday. On a Sunday, in the week it's dead, but on a Sunday, it operates about 50%. But Whitechapel market, so it was pretty much in decline. And then what happened was, so we're talking about 20 years ago, traders of actually primarily Bangladeshi background, but also of Turkish and Pakistani background, started to become market traders. And so when the market was almost on its knees, that's when they started to come, and then it helped revitalize the market, because previously it was actually really empty. I think I saw a document from one of our planning documents from 1986 of potentially a Whitechapel shopping centre, and he had some images of the market, which is pretty much in decline. And so that's what happened, for the last 20 years. And so with, I guess, the potential changes, and again, some of the discussion about potential or the gentrification, I think one of the challenges for us as a local authority is how do we ensure that the local businesses, be they shops, be they traders, don't get left behind, and how can they adapt and understand the changes, understand the economics and the demographic factors coming in and around Whitechapel. So, for example, we're looking at perhaps there can be done, say, some form of training and development that can be provided, potentially, say, at the Idea Store, or kind of different forms that can help provide business support. So on Monday, for example, we've got a consultation at the Idea Store that's for both market traders as well as shops, that they can come in and we can talk about the Whitechapel vision, we can talk about the proposed changes, and then we can talk about what can be done in terms of actually supporting them, enabling them to grow, and to be aware that, I think also that the demographics of Whitechapel will be changing in the next 5 to 10 years. The customer base will also change as well, and I guess what they sell, how they operate might not necessarily be the case in the next 5 to 10 years. And for example, Alex gave the kind of as a case study Tabby Isaacs. So I worked previously, before my role also in council, I worked in market services. And so I had 2 colleagues that worked in market service for over 30 years. And they kind of talked to me about, Isaac, and I think the week he left, I actually went to his stall to try some of his seafood. But that's an example of where someone might have been in one place for a substantial long time, but with the changes coming in, I think from a business perspective, if they're not, I guess, responsive to kind of the market economics, to, I guess, the demographics changes, then sometimes as a business that they could struggle and potentially close. And I think it's about understanding from a business perspective what the changes are, how they're likely to change, what the impact will have on their business. So we're talking about, for example, the traders. If you go up and down Whitechapel, there's probably primarily 3 types of traders. One is fruit and veg, the second is mobile phones, and the third is Asian cultural clothing. They're the 3 primary types of traders.
Yeah. So moving forward at the moment, the strategy that we're delivering is the active spaces strategy. So we're activating external spaces within Whitechapel in the meanwhile while major development schemes are being worked up. So we will be consulting with the residents and the businesses in the very near future, and I think we will take into account how they sense Whitechapel, whether that's the chicken shop or whatever. So we also invite you to have a look at our master plan here, which I brought along with me today. Thank you.